Good afternoon. And thank you all for joining us today for Pathways Home, a virtual discussion. Today's panel is going to share with you how COVID-19 affected the housing and homelessness providers and the importance of community partnerships with our local health centers. My name is Kellyanne Day, and I'm the CEO of New Reach. And it's our vision that all children, families, and individuals have a safe, secure, affordable home with the services necessary to not just survive, but to thrive. We do this regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, race, religion, and sexual orientation. Last year, New Reach provided crisis shelter and housing services to over 3,500 people throughout Greater New Haven, Bridgeport, and Danbury. We diverted over 1,200 children from shelter, and we housed close to 700 people safely and affordably. The people you will meet today are responsible for this amazing work. And we will hear from New Reach staff members representing our housing programs and our family shelters and how they provided support. During COVID, we were all being asked to stay home and to stay safe, but for some that was very difficult. New Reach and our community partners provided support and housing to those who didn't have a home. Today, you'll also hear from our partner, Phil Costello, who's the clinical director of the Greater New Haven Healthcare for the Homeless at Cornell Scott Health Center. In addition to providing life-saving care to people living on the streets, Phil and his team support the professionals who work directly with clients. Many thanks to all of you again for attending and for supporting. I would like to give a special shout out in support of our sponsor, Nutmeg Consulting, a high-quality IT and project management company who has an expertise in implementing and managing the state of Connecticut's homeless information management system. I'd also like to thank the staff who are participating in the panel today for their time, professionalism, dedication, and compassion. You will meet them shortly. And finally, I'd like to recognize New Reach board members and former board members who are joining us today. Shalante Ford, Kathy Pettinella, Aisha Bello, Mary Ferrari, Al Smith, Linda Zimmerman, Mary Rose Hoffman, Michael West Jr., and Jacinia LeBron. At this time, I would like to turn the program over to Brooke Lombardo, our clinical director, and Jocelyn Antunes, our senior program manager, who will be moderating today's panel and question and answers. Brooke?
Thanks, Kellyanne. Welcome, everyone. Happy afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Before we get started into jumping into the panel, I wanted to just do a few housekeeping. For those of you maybe not as familiar with Zoom, but you are all muted, and how we are going to sort of manage our question and answer section after we do some questions with our panelists is if you have any questions that you would like to ask the panelists, just use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. And we will have someone making sure that they're monitoring that so that after each panelist speaks, if there's any other questions, we can offer time for those to be shared and answered. Also, we want to let you guys know, which is very exciting for us, we are also going live right now on Facebook and on our YouTube channel, which is very exciting. So just so you are all aware of that. And last but not least, before I get into introducing our panelists, another feature of Zoom that we think would be really helpful while sitting on this and listening to us speak is changing your view to speaker view. So there's two different types of view on Zoom. And if you go to the top right, there's a little button that says view. I think it tends to start in gallery view. If you switch that to speaker view, then you'll have a nice, beautiful big screen of our speakers as they're talking, which I think will make for this to be a little bit more pleasurable. So that being said, I would like to introduce our panelists, which is very exciting. We have 3 staff from New Reach who will be sharing some of their experience with you guys today, as well as Phil Costello from Cornell Scott Health. I like to just get a little personal with each person so you guys can learn a little something about each of them prior to me asking them more formal questions. So the first person that you guys are going to hear from is Kathy Hammy. She is our senior supportive housing caseworker, and she works at our Portsea Place facility as well with our other permanent supportive housing programs. And one fun thing about Kathy, as I've gotten to know her and most of our staff know, is she's a mom of 3 boys and is a dedicated mom to her sons, one of which plays basketball right now at Boston University, and she's always there cheering him on. We always hear about his great victories. So that's always a Kathy, if you know anything about her. After Kathy, you guys will hear from Nikki Carter. Nikki Carter is our shelter clinical program manager. So she oversees our shelter programs. And one fun fact about Nikki that we're going to give her some grace today is, with some irony, is she is terrified of public speaking, yet still is willing to share her wonderful work here today. So let's give her a little extra love as she presents today. After Nikki, we have Phil Costello from Cornell Scott Hill Health. And as Kellyanne mentioned, he is the clinical director of the Greater New Haven Healthcare for the Homeless. Phil is known to many people in the community as Dr. Phil. He is a nurse practitioner, has been doing this work for over a decade, is very passionate about the work, someone that I got to meet very quickly in my career here with New Reach. And he's kind of just known to everyone in the community as the one who kind of just rolls up his sleeves and does incredible work. Prior to becoming a nurse practitioner, he actually worked in medical engineering for over 20 years. So that's an interesting fun fact about Phil as well. But he recently, along with his fellow coworker, Jessica Arroyo, won a leadership award with the Partnership for Stronger Communities for his incredible work and their incredible work over the past year and a half in this pandemic. I know he's the first person that New Reach kind of turned to help support us. And he was taking my calls at the middle, evening, whatever time, to try to help us get the resources that we need. So we are forever grateful for him and Cornell Scott. So you guys will hear from him a little later. And last but not least, we have Calvin Cummings. He is our lead social worker of our clinical programs for the agency. And one fun thing about Calvin, other than the fact that he has a twin brother, is that he is currently studying at Yale University as a graduate student in getting a master's of arts in creative writing. And he is a wealth of knowledge and always a fun person to talk to. So we're very proud of everyone who's on the panel today. And without further ado, I'm going to jump right into asking some questions to our panelists. And I'm going to start with you, Kathy, over at Portsea Place. I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about your experience around opening up Portsea Place and engaging the youth in the community during this time. Maybe sharing a little bit about what type of collaborations that were needed in order for it to be successful.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy. So it was, we had a plan, prior to COVID. And then so we had to adjust and use a lot of teamwork and to get it going, because it all happened during COVID. So with the youths, we collaborated with them, with the landlord, with facilities. We hired a peer specialist, me, IT, and just my team all together as support. IT helped us, of course, with the phone system, with the computer system, just kind of, navigating everything, because we were kind of home, and then I was also there at Portsea. Also with the facilities, we had to set up interviews with the youths via, Zoom or via whatever. They use their phones and we use Teams. So, which was also another aspect of which IT had to set up. They had to set up different programs on our computers so we can navigate and, just coordinate with everybody. So we met with the youths over the phone, which was hard for them. And it was hard for us because they didn't know us and so we tried to get as much information as we could to get to know them. Then finally, we were able to move them in. They signed their leases. So I met with them and facilities that day. We signed leases. So we did meet them. So like I said, they were scared and I was nervous because it was pretty new for me as far as working with the youth. Normally I work in a different program, but I was ready for it. And so we basically, with the peer, we kind of coordinate my schedule and his schedule so we can come in and they would see us regularly, because I feel like them getting to see us and getting to know us and just us being there would make them feel comfortable. And it did. It worked slowly but surely. We had, some kinks, but it panned out. So they would come down little by little and talk to us. So that's how we got to know them. As far as the community collabs, that was a lot. We use the CANS program, we collaborate with Youth Continuum, we collaborate with Section 8, we collaborate with the older women and the neighbors. We actually had we invited the neighbors and the older women to come to Port C to see Port C and to talk to us, because they had reservations, you know, about us moving there, and they thought it was going to be a shelter, which it isn't. It's their home. So we had to really explain that to them, because they had a different outlook. Oh, it's going to be problems. But once I think they came and they were able to meet us and understand and ask their own questions to us, they felt a little bit better. They were more welcoming, which was good for us, because we want to be welcomed into the neighborhood. I mean, you know, we want them to feel comfortable where they live. So we also work with Jordan's Furniture, which was another community collaboration. We got new furniture. So it was just a teamwork, I would say, of, like I said, the community and from my New Reach staff, and just working with everybody just to make them feel comfortable. And like I said, coming into we were working from home. So, you know, the decision to come into Port C for myself, you know, because they kind of left it open, like, you know, you don't have to come in, but I felt like me being there was important. They needed to see my face. So I had to put on my big girl pants, and I said, you know, I'm going to do this. I put my mask on, and I made them, we made them wear masks. They followed COVID rules. They really did well. And I was surprised, but happy. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kathy, for sharing that. And I think for the people on the call who aren't as familiar with Port C Place, Kathy had mentioned that some people in the community thought it was a shelter, and it's actually not. It is an 8-unit facility or 8-unit home for individuals or youth ages 18 to 24. And the goal, or what we like to call in the community, is a non-time limited housing program, which essentially just means that the youth can stay there as long as they want, right? It is their apartments. They do have leases. And the goal is for them to be there, you know, for as long as they need in order to maybe take that next step in their life, whether that's pursuing education, whether that's their career and work. So it is in our Hill neighborhood of New Haven. But that's just a little bit more about the program. So it is a housing program that we do offer. And I think Kathy's one of her biggest points that's huge, that, you know, opening up a program in the middle of a pandemic where you're trying to engage young people, and, you know, young people are hard to engage regardless, but in front of a screen is going to be really challenging. So I think it was really incredible the work that Kathy and, you know, our peer support were able to do to show up in the middle of a pandemic to build these relationships with the youth, which has made it so successful over the last, you know, year and a couple of months. We opened it last August, and right in the middle of the pandemic. So thank you, Kathy, for sharing your experience with that.
You're welcome.
So moving on to Nikki Carter, who is our shelter programs clinical program manager. Nikki oversees both our Life Haven and Martha's Place shelters, which Life Haven is a family shelter that we have in the Fairhaven neighborhood of New Haven, and Martha's Place is for individual women experiencing homelessness, and it's in our Hill neighborhood of New Haven. Nikki, I'm curious from you if you can share what changes were made within the shelter to keep both clients and staff safe during the pandemic, while still being able to maintain coverage at the shelters 24/7.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will say that COVID was a blessing for our homeless population, and as it relates to us here at New Reach, we were able to provide PPE for all of our staff, being that we had to be here 24 hours. We weren't able to get a break. We have frontline staff that always had to make sure that our building was secure, that our clients were safe, and we were still providing treatment. I came into New Reach at the beginning of the pandemic, coming in, rolling up my sleeves and rolling with the punches to make sure that we were still meeting our clients where they needed to be met. COVID, as a blessing, has provided us the funding to be able to house over 85% of our population here for our families, making their time at shelter very, very brief, and for them to obtain a positive exit and sustain life outside of shelter. The funding that we have been able to provide from the city has been amazing. Phil, as well as Jessica, had played a major part in shelter care and making sure that our staff, as well as our clients, had little exposure to COVID with weekly testing, making sure that everyone had the proper medical care that was needed for us. By the grace of the man above, we hadn't had any COVID exposure here. And if we were to have COVID exposure, the city made it possible for us to isolate our clients within proper hoteling to create social distancing. A lot of work that we do here at New Reach affects, everyone, not just our clients, but our staff. And we have been able to be successful during COVID and just continue to meet the needs of everyone that we serve here. Our staff is grateful for Phil and his team. Our clients are grateful for Phil and his team. And now with Phil and the team offering vaccinations, we're going to continue to stay on top of COVID and keep everyone safe here at New Reach and in shelter.
Thank you, Nikki. And I know Nikki has sent praises to Phil and Jessica over Cornell Scott Hill Health. And before we move on to hearing a little bit from Phil, I think also Nikki, praises from you and your team, really being able to get creative and jump in and figure this work out. And how do we, practice social distancing as, shelters need to continue running, people need that safe place. And how do we make sure that the residents that are there and the new residents coming in all can be safe, and trying our best to share the resources when needed. So it's been a blessing to have you throughout this pandemic. Nikki didn't know life at New Reach in the shelter world pre-pandemic, because we were lucky to have her join the team about a month into all of the chaos. She joined us in May of 2020. So that has also been a huge blessing to have her over there and really focusing on this work and doing it in a way that's also trauma informed, which has been huge and also very challenging in a lot of ways, just with everything going on. So thank you for that and stepping up to the plate. And Phil, yes, Nikki's already sort of shared your praises, as have I. And I'm hoping you can kind of share with the group today a little bit about how the New Haven community has adapted medically during COVID to meet the needs of the clients.
Sure. So across we had to adapt our philosophies and our strategies for engaging our clients through COVID. Our knowledge of COVID grew as the disease progressed into our communities. We didn't have all the information at first, so we had to make some difficult decisions. The thing that we had to do was to communicate with each other, was to create tighter bonds between the shelter organizations and the medical and our group, our medical community, to try to work together to make sure that any of the latest guidelines and treatment got updated and got to all the shelter staff as quickly as possible so that we could keep everybody as safe as possible. That being said, when we first started, we went out with the different shelter staffs where people were living in such a congregate setting that all the beds were very, very close together. And we went with the shelter managers and myself, and we talked to the clients at that point and said, look, right now, you may be safer outside with this disease. You may be safer living in a tent out on the grass rather than being in here with what we know about this disease at this point. And in retrospect, that was a true statement. Getting that across had several of the homeless actually did exit at that time. It was March. It was getting a little bit warmer. But then we had to go to the shelters, creating more social distance. From there, we had a struggle trying to get PPE for all the different shelters and soup kitchens. There was questions about whether we were considered frontline workers at that point, not the medical staffs, but the shelter workers, which is like, by God, of course they're frontline workers. They can't go home. These people need help. It's like, that's like saying the nursing home people were not frontline workers. I mean, it was a battle that we had to fight together, and working together and working with social media and resources, we were able to find sources of PPE to get, sometimes hand to mouth, to the different shelters, and thermometers. I can remember putting out calls on Facebook that anybody have any extra thermometers for the shelters. And we were able to get some through public support at the time. There was a lot of fear involved, and I really want to commend the shelter staff for their bravery, because nobody knew much about this disease. We knew people were dying. We knew it was very, very infective and people could get it easily. And we knew we had to wear masks, but did we have to wear N95 masks? Did we have to wear regular masks? These are all things that we had to basically go to work every day, and we weren't sure if we were going to get it or not. And if we did, would we live? So it was a very difficult time. How I think we got through it with the success we did was we got through it through teamwork and through weekly, sometimes twice a week communications, where we would just talk things out. And, from our end, we would present the different medical facts that came up. And then we would work through, with the different shelters and soup kitchens, we would work through what was the best path. And I think it was that collaboration and that connection to each other that really allowed us to kind of work back and forth to create the solutions we did. And I firmly believe that it was us communicating that got us through the way we did with I think, any loss is a terrible loss, but I think it could have been a lot worse I think we chose a very good path to keep as many people safe as we could.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil, for sharing that. And thank you for that reminder, because I think you really eloquently sort of shared for people what different frontline staff were experiencing during that time, and some maybe still now. And we, I know at the beginning, I was sort of processing a lot with my team, talking about, the clients and concerns for the clients and how are we going to keep them safe and getting their needs met. And while that was very important, we found a lot of our clients, and I'm not sure if you felt this too, there was a lot of resiliency in our clients because they've, been through a lot. And, it became a lot of traumatic experiences for staff, and that fear at the beginning of not really knowing and still going out there and doing this work. And I know I've said this a few times already, but your team was out there, and your team was the one that everyone sort of turned to, when we had questions. And, you didn't always have the answers, but I think the fact that you guys were there was so incredible for so many shelters and so many individuals living on the streets at that time. And I'm wondering from you, just sort of as a follow-up before we move on, you've shared a little bit of those lessons learned, and as we progressed and learned more about what COVID really looked like, what do you kind of see moving forward? Like going forward, what do you think this will look like? What's sort of your plan or the?
Well, my hope is that we can get as many people vaccinated as possible to protect us and protect us from future mutations of this virus. The more people that are able to get it, the more hosts have, the more the virus has the ability to be able to mutate in a given host and create a new strain. So I think, to protect all of mankind as a whole, the more people we can have vaccinated to get this, to be protected from this virus, I think it would be very beneficial. I think as time progresses and we do that, certainly the mask restrictions and things can start to come down. But the resistance is a very real thing, and we've been very lucky because it could have mutated into another strain that had no vaccines and would continue to kill everybody at a high rate. So at a higher rate. So I think it's important to, understand that the virus is kind of fighting back through these mutations to try to live. And it's important to get those vaccines and to, a vaccine is it's an injection that simulates that you have the virus so that your own body can develop its immunity and your own body can develop very specific antibodies to fight the virus. And so it's not like you're ingesting something that's going to kill it itself. It's you're encouraging your own body to build its own immune system.
Thank you for that, Phil. And that's sort of that reminder too, right? How important this vaccine is and how life-saving it truly has shown to be. And one of the things too in the shelter, and I know you're doing this work too, we've worked really hard with our staff and shelter to help kind of navigate that for some of the residents who maybe are unsure or are really maybe uneducated or scared or nervous about the vaccine, and using that person-centered approach to really kind of communicate the benefits of it and support our residents in pursuing access to the vaccine. I think as a state, we've done an incredible job with that. And I think right now, most of the individuals I know, at least at our Martha's Place shelter, are vaccinated, which is an incredible, I think win in regards to just providing that education and support. And I know you guys do that day in and day out too. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. So want to move on a little bit to Calvin Cummings, our lead social worker at New Reach. And Calvin, I'm curious if you can share with us a little bit, not only just about our clients, but New Reach staff and dealing with the pandemic. But can you kind of share a little bit about this other pandemic that's kind of going coincidingly with mental health and substance use, and how our clinical team has been working with the clients around these issues, as well as what we've tried to do to really implement to staff wellness around this kind of coinciding pandemic?
Thanks, Brooke. I want to start by just saying, I think we've all experienced within the last year and a half, 2 years of just being affected by something that has exacerbated our own mental health, has asked us to really look deeper into what wellness looks like for ourselves. How do we cope? How are our bodies responding? To answer the question specifically around this team, our clinical team, how we've been working with clients, it's been just that. I've been able to work alongside a committee of folks and a department of folks within our ICP program and our Medicaid program that really feel the urgency of what it means to actually think about how our clients are living through and surviving a global pandemic, as we also, and I think the urgency comes from us feeling the need to respond to our own mental health and realizing our access to things that our clients and staff and other staff may not have. So we've been working alongside that committee, we started a trauma-informed care committee in March, and that includes staff across a few programs. And so I think the urgency behind and the beauty of the work that we've been able to be a part of is that we've been feeling it ourselves and knowing that if we feel this with the level of resources and the level of privilege that we have, even as staff members, how are our clients experiencing it? So the question of wellness has been looming, and it doesn't have one answer. What we've done, we've tried to think about what actually works. How are our clients experiencing these things? What's happening? What's realistically going on? Not just on the news, but we had the opportunity to work close by, and that's a double-edged sword, right? Because as we get closer to trauma, we can also have experiences of vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. And so, just to say a little bit about our committee and the folks I've been able to work alongside. We thought about how do we start this committee and how can we do good work? So we thought about providing an annual trauma-informed training, and we did that in July and had a facilitator come in and really nurture and kind of spend some time with our program staff and some staff across the agency. And then we thought about how do we reach deep and wide? And so we started thinking about collaborating with local agencies who were experiencing similar issues, local universities who are dealing with their niche concerns, but also dealing with it in the same interval of time that we were, as we thought about opening up, as we were responding to different things. So the arts and healing have not been inextricable, and I think we did good work to think about how do we get the people that are working at an art gallery and doing art and creative healing, creative practice, art therapy as care and support. How do we get all these people in a room and plan and think about how we maybe can provide some places for our staff and our clients to let some of this air out, to breathe a little bit, to have moments where they get to think about their wellness and not just survive during these times. And so taking up, we thought about that. We started a partnership, and it's been beautiful to build connection with local agencies. And so we also thought about trauma-informed language when we thought about our clinical assessments, our programming. How can we ask these questions a little bit more, and a lot, for lack of a better word, kindly, to think, well, like, what brings our clients joy? What actually is bringing joy? And I think even pointing to that moment, we should have the option of joy, right? And I think we can't fix everything, but we've done what we can. So just to highlight some of the things we're taking on an art therapist intern to see if the art therapist intern can use their training time thinking about our staff as a client. So using the resources that are available, using effectiveness. Every therapist has to be trained in some way, so that funding goes somewhere. But if we could utilize institutional effectiveness dollars to also provide an art therapist intern for our staff, why would we not look wide? Why would we not build connections? And then we thought about trauma-informed space. Our client meeting rooms were opening back up. We had all these things opening back up, and asking our staff to come into this space, to enter in a space that may be hard for them to enter into. And so during our Staff Appreciation Month, we opened a wellness room. I think that's where we kind of think we always divorce arts from healing, but it doesn't contradict the medical view in bringing emotional, somatic, artistic, and spiritual dimensions to how we heal and how we, kind of breathe and think about our wellness. So we open up a wellness room in our office space, and it's an opportunity for staff to feel safe and to feel heard and validated, that their concerns that they were bringing up in our trauma-informed committee and the concerns that they were bringing up, having to acclimate and come back into a very, I guess maybe static or very tense workspace. We wanted opportunities for them to feel heard. So, and even thinking about mindfulness in these Zoom meetings, these meetings, like while we're doing here, we provided some tips and some training to staff and supervisors. So how do you open your meeting with your staff members? Can you carve out 5 minutes for maybe a meditation, maybe asking staff how they're feeling coming into this virtual space, which is, again, maybe not new over the last year, but still it's in so many ways can be another form of trauma. And so I've run through a lot of different things, but I think it's just that question of wellness and keep asking it as the things around us keep changing. What does it mean to live and thrive and be well? I think it's been a great to adequately and pragmatically respond to what has come up in our work. So thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. That was so well said. And I think, you know, Calvin shared that we started this committee this year, last March, and, you know, trauma-informed care is not a new word, right? It's been around for a while. And what does that really mean? And I think, you know, I've worked for many agencies in the past who sort of said trauma-informed care, let's practice it. And, you know, I think New Reach has really been the first place where it's been allowed to really grow and develop into something that's so incredible and is actually being implemented, right? We have the trainings, we know what to do, and then sometimes we miss that step on like then implementing it, whether that's with the clients or our staff. And we've done an incredible job here as an agency, and I'm very proud that we've had the ability from senior leadership to make these changes and moving forward, really recognizing that space for all of our staff, whether they were on the front lines in shelter or doing some other work. So thank you, Calvin, for sharing that. So we have a little bit of time. I know that we're due to end around 12:45. I think we at least have time for maybe one question. Jocelyn, I'm not sure if anyone has put any questions in the chat that you want to maybe share to the group, and we can try to have maybe one or two before we wrap things up.
Thanks, Brooke. Again, please feel free to type any comments and questions in the chat. We'll do our best to get them answered now, or at least circle back if we need. But I guess sort of my first question maybe to you, Phil, is any procedures, you know, that you put in place during the pandemic that you think improved the quality of care?
So I think probably the biggest thing was being able to shift a lot of people. Well, there's a couple of different things. Obviously, to prevent infection, taking the temperatures and the screenings and the weekly testing were all instrumental in making sure we weren't spreading the virus, maybe not keeping it out of our shelters in retrospect, but I think the social distancing aspect, having had to adjust to the social distancing and the steps we had to take, I think created a more humane environment in a lot of cases, not every case, but certainly in the case where we were mass sheltering large groups of people, to be able to give them a more unique living space, a hotel room with just another person. I think this speaks volumes to our population because most of them actually have experienced some serious trauma in their lives. And so putting them in a gang bedroom with all these other people, they don't know if somebody's going to steal their stuff. They don't know if somebody's going to, pick a fight with them or bully them in some way or assault them in some way. And so it creates a lot more stressors for our clients in that type of an environment. And I think, as we separated in social distance, even if we had to do that within our own organizations, it created more space for people to breathe and to live and to.
Yeah. And I think you're right, Phil. We as a community are very hands-on and very sort of connected through our contact and as someone working through the pandemic and supervising staff who are also, as Calvin mentioned, experiencing fear and loss and grief, and really how to support that in turn to making sure that we were able to support the clients as well you know, has been difficult. And I think we've learned quite a few things. And there are some things that will remain that we were doing that we weren't doing prior to this pandemic. But as we have navigated through and are starting to come out a little bit on the other side, you know, things that we've learned and lessons that we've taken that we'll continue to do to support our own staff and our clients, and to be able to identify what those are and think about new ways of engagement that we had to learn. And now we've realized that they've really been beneficial to everyone, because as clients were experiencing crises, so were staff and people in the front lines. And so we want to certainly pay recognition to that as well, through what everyone really went through. And I think this gave the community an opportunity to all sort of experience one thing together. In a sense, we didn't have any more answers or any more resources or any more knowledge than anyone else. So it was really something that brought us all as one in our connections. And so we all needed to sort of deal with that fear and trauma together of what we experienced and are even still experiencing at this point. So thank you. I think we probably at this point will turn it back over to Kellyanne. Again, if there's any comments or anything for the chat, please feel free. We can always have one of our wonderful panelists get back to you. So please feel free to do that. And Kellyanne, I will turn it back to you at this time.
Thank you, Jocelyn. So just a big shout out and thank you to Brooke and Jocelyn and Kathy, Calvin, Nikki, and Phil for sharing their experiences with us today. I hope you found it as powerful and informative as I did. Just want to thank all the staff on the front lines for their courage and their hard work and their unwavering commitment to helping others. And thank you all for attending and for caring about this cause and about the work that's happening in your community. And please, as Jocelyn said, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments, anything that you want to share with us. We would love to hear. And so please also look forward to an invitation to an upcoming Pathways event. So with that, we will close and thank you again for coming.